Hello and welcome back to Centrelink_stories. Things have been rather busy on this end of things after the whole Reddit fiasco, and speaking of which, let's get these stories out there. #Centrelink_stories. I've set up in a few new places and I've had other people helping me to collect stories with the permission of the people whom have been sharing them. Which again was always the goal despite what some others have claimed, and I still have the receipts to prove that despite their best efforts. Regardless, I've had some really good ones passed on to me along with some of the typical things that happen a lot but are often discounted as quote-unquote common sense. This one really annoyed me because it's such a straw man argument and it gets tossed around a lot both by Centrelink and people that call anyone on Centrelink dole bludgeoners. Just before I get into the actual story, the definition of a straw man argument is an argument grounded in a fallacy to make their opponent's argument exaggerated or misleading so it's easier to undermine without actually acknowledging the argument itself or the facts behind it. Unfortunately, a perfect example of this is what happened with me and r/Centrelink, because I kept asking for their evidence and instead of answering me they just kept coming back to the same fallacious argument that I was doing something I wasn't. We've already heard enough about that, so let's move on. Let's get into this first story and I'll explain why it's a straw man afterward. The person who shared this story asked to remain anonymous. When I moved to a new area, I was told that it was an area of lower employment prospects and that because of that my payments could be suspended for up to 6 months. On the surface that sounds reasonable, does it not? I mean, yes, you will get some people that move out to rural areas to avoid work, but they are few and far between for numerous reasons. The main one being that moving is expensive. I moved across a small city not too long ago, and if I didn't have my friends helping me, moving one bedroom of furniture would have cost me $400 to $600 just to get it across town. Then you need to add on the bond, let's say $1,000 to $1,200 for a cheap place. The first month's rent another $1,000 to $1,200. Utility connection fees $200 to $400. At a minimum that's $2,600, and for someone on job seeker that's usually about 2 to 3 months of payments without spending a cent over that time. Then there may be other associated fees or costs that are tacked on for someone's individual circumstances. Before someone comes out and says, what about bond assistance? Bond assistance is tied up in the place you're currently living in if you've taken out an application for that and can't be released until you've secured a new place and gotten it returned to the government. What that often means is that people get stuck where they are, or they get stuck in limbo waiting for the bond to release on their current place before they can apply it to the new one, and sometimes that can take weeks or months and they end up missing out on the new place while being stuck in a rental they were supposed to leave some time ago. Funnily enough, realtors don't like that and it causes a whole myriad of issues and stress. The next one in regards to expenses I hear quite often is, can't they just borrow the money from family or friends? The simple answer is maybe. A lot of the time their entire social group is in a similar place to them and aren't able to loan them anything at all without going into financial hardship themselves, because as stated above, the average job seeker payment is roughly $700 to $750 per fortnight with rent assistance. Now stop and ask yourself, if I'm living on $375 per week, am I going to be able to loan $500 to my brother Jimmy, whom is also living on $375 a week? The answer is probably no. But then you're going to get the people that say, well, surely they have a friend or a family who has a job and can help them out. And that's true, they might, but even if they have the means, which they may or may not, they're not obligated to, which is why we have the social safety net that is welfare. So, that's why this is a straw man argument on a financial basis. Even if someone on job seeker wanted to move to a rural area in an attempt to avoid work, they'd need a few $1,000s sitting in their back pocket. I know someone's going to say it, so I might as well get it out of the way. What if someone has a job and then quits to move to a rural area to avoid work? Well, then they're an idiot. I used to live in a rural area and I can assure you that lack of transport even in the most remote of areas will not work as an excuse to miss your appointments with Centrelink or your job provider. I used to have to get on a train and wait 5 to 6 hours for the next train back for a 15-minute appointment. The next part of the straw man I want to cover is, well, if we don't put a deterrent on people moving to remote areas, all of the dole bludgers will just move to remote areas. It hasn't happened yet. Even if it did happen, that's not necessarily a bad thing in any way you look at it, really. Hear me out on this one. If an area suddenly experiences a population boom, it usually ends up leading to a service shortage, which in turn would end up creating jobs in that area and boosting its economy. The other big fallacy is that these places are finite. There are only so many rental properties to go around, and if there's no more room, then no one can go there. So in the end, this big myth about dole bludgers hiding in rural areas is just one big straw man that needs a date with a match. The only reason it exists is to have a finger to point at someone else instead of fixing the problem. The next time you're pointing your finger, look at your hand, because 3 of your fingers are pointing back at you.